everyone, I'm Abigail, this is Megan, and welcome to another Two-Kid interview.
We are joined by author Jordan Sonnenblick.
Mr. Sonnenblick has written the books Secret Sheriff in 6th grade, Curveball, The Year I Lost My Grip,
Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie, Ever After, the Dodger series,
the nonfiction books The Boy Who Failed Show and Tell, The Boy Who Failed Dodgeball, and more.
Thank you for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
You write children's and young adult books. How are your fiction books influenced by your own childhood?
Well, that's a really good question. To some extent, my earliest young adult books were influenced more by what was going on in my adult life than what was going on in my childhood, because I was a teacher. And my first few books were inspired by things that were happening to my own 8th grade students. So I was noticing what was going on in their lives rather than thinking back on what had gone on in my life. But as my career has gone on, I've taken more and more details of things that happened around me in my childhood and given characters those problems or those issues or that background.
Can you tell us about a time where you were doing something and noticed someone or something and thought, I need to put that in a book?
Sure, absolutely. Let me think on this. There have been a bunch, but for one example of it is when I was naming the character in my second book, Notes from the Midnight Driver. I was looking around at people and I wanted to feel good about the main character, right? So I was trying to pick a first name and a last name. And I had a student whose first name was Alex and a student whose last name was Gregory. And I really liked these two boys. And I thought if I name the student with the first name of one and the last name of the other, so his name is Alex Gregory, I'll feel good about this character because he'll remind me of these two kids I care about. And so that was an example of taking something that was going on around me. I took Alex Nowak and John Gregory, these two students, and kind of put them together and made this character Alex Gregory. And it helped me because it helped me to remember at all times that I liked the main character and make that come across in the book.
Write a lot as a child?
I did. I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I was one of those people who brag they're going to write a book someday. It took me a very long time to actually do it. So I didn't start writing my first book that actually became a published book until I was 33. But ever since I was a little kid, I knew that was sort of the dream.
What is your process when putting a book together?
Do you decide the end before the middle?
Or do you put it together in order?
It depends on the book. But for example, like I just got an idea for a book the other day, and ideas come for me at generally strange times when I'm not expecting it and not trying. So the other night, 2 nights ago, I actually got a really bad headache. I got a migraine and I went to sleep in the middle at like 5 p.m. and just tried to sleep away the headache. And I woke up sort of half awake at like 8 that night. And I was lying in bed trying to decide whether my head still hurt or not. And I was just kind of lying there in a daze. And all of a sudden, the entire idea for a new book came to me because I was sort of half asleep and half awake. And it just popped into my head because I wasn't thinking about a book. I was thinking about the headache. I was thinking about everything else. And pow, this idea came to me. And this book, which I'm thinking I'll write now, is about 2 boys who are kind of social outcasts at school, and people call them losers. And so they feel bad about themselves, but they have a treehouse in the woods and they go there and they make up stories about this imaginary land they wish they lived in, where they can be heroes, like a fantasy land. And through a series of events that I'm not going to give away yet, one of them goes home and goes to sleep. And when he wakes up the next morning, he realizes that the other boy has started writing the story and he's in it. So he wakes up in their fantasy world and he realizes that his friend is writing the events that are happening to him. And it's about how this kid finds a way to get back out of the fantasy world and into the real world.
I'd read that book.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Abigail.
Most people who write books for kids our age write fiction or nonfiction.
You actually do both.
Do you think it's harder to do both?
I don't know. Writing fiction is hard. I actually found writing the nonfiction books to be easier, which was my two most recent books, The Boy Who Failed Show and Tell and The Boy Who Failed Dodgeball. They're both memoirs of when I was a kid. And those were easier to write because unlike when you're writing a novel, I didn't have to make anything up, right? Everything that happened in them was true. So when I sat down to write each day, all I had to think about was like, okay, what happened next when I was a kid? You know, I didn't have to make up anything in a plot. I didn't have to decide whether it was realistic or not. It happened, so I knew it happened. And that was actually a much easier thing to do for me than writing fiction.
For your biographical books, is it hard to remember enough from your childhood?
And should we start writing things down just in case?
I don't think it's a bad idea to write things down as they're happening to you if you want to be an author, to keep kind of a journal. One of the things I did when I went to write the books is I tracked people down on Facebook who had been in my classes when I was a kid. And I asked them, like, what do you remember about fourth grade for The Boy Who Failed Show and Tell, and for The Boy Who Failed Dodgeball? What do you remember about sixth grade? And some of the things that they remembered triggered memories in me that wound up being in the book. And some of the things that they remembered just told me like, hey, okay, good. I'm remembering it well. I'm remembering what really happened. So I kind of used people who had known me back then as like my check to make sure that I was on the right track. And the other thing I did was I did research. So, for example, when I was in fifth grade, there was a gasoline shortage. And people had to line up in their cars like overnight to be lined up when the gas station opened in the morning to get gas. So I remembered my big sister and me getting piled into the back of my mom's car and going to sleep, like in the hatchback. And my mom would drive and park in the line at the gas station. And we'd wake up at like 7 a.m. when the line started moving, and run into the gas station and buy like, soda and Twinkies for our breakfast from the vending machines in the gas station. But I didn't remember what year it had been when that happened. So I had to look online for stories about the gas crisis to find out when it had happened. Because the worst thing I could have done would be to kind of lie and make things up or get the dates wrong so that the historical events didn't match up with what really happened. So there was a lot of actual online research.
After you finished your first draft, how much do you revise the book?
Depends on the book. With the autobiographical books, I didn't revise very much because what happened is what happened. So I kind of got most of it right the first time. And then I just had to go back and kind of polish it for tone. With some of my fiction books, I mean, I've gone back and added entire chapters. I've gone back and deleted entire chapters. It depends very much on the book.
What writer has had the most influence on you?
Oh, gosh, wow. There are a few. In the kid world, I would say an author who was very popular when I was a kid, named Judy Blume, had a big influence on me because she wrote sort of funny books about what it was really like to be a kid, but also with serious undertones like real friendship problems and real family problems and what it's like when your parents move or what it's like when your parents are getting divorced. And I kind of try to honor her ability to be serious on the one hand and funny on the other at the same time. And then there are two adult authors who kind of did the same thing. One named Frank McCourt and one named Kurt Vonnegut. And they both do that too. They wrote funny books about serious topics. And I try to always maintain that balance in my own writing.
What advice do you have for young people who want to write?
Oh gosh, read a ton. I think that being a writer always starts first and foremost with being a good reader. And so my first advice to anyone who wants to be a writer is just always to make sure you're reading a lot.
That's big advice.
Do you also have a smaller tip? Something you do in your writing?
That maybe a lot of people don't.
probably remember that when you're making your main character, you want the reader to like them, but you don't want the main character to be perfect, because if the main character is perfect, then they're not relatable. So the trick is making the character flawed enough so that they still seem like a real human being, but good enough that you're rooting for them. And trying to keep in mind that balance is really important, because otherwise you can wind up with like a very boring, flat main character who's just like a goody two shoes all the time. And you have to show that your character has bad thoughts and negative ideas and wants to do mischief, because it's the balance of the character learning how to behave that's interesting, right? And if the character's perfect, then they already know how to behave.
Finally, it's time for our Turbo 10.
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'll try to be ready.
Let's go. Number 1. What is your favorite phrase to use?
My favorite phrase to use. It's probably when my kids are arguing. I have 2 kids who are 25 and 21. And I say this all the time when they're arguing. I say, I love you and I love you. So that's probably the phrase that my kids would say is the number one thing I say is I love you and I love you.
Number 2. What's one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Wow. If I had all the time in the world, it would probably be studying my foreign languages more, because I've taken Spanish and German and Russian. And my Spanish is I still use it a lot because my son speaks Spanish to me when he talks to me. But my German and my especially my Russian are really rusty. So I would love to get more opportunities to study foreign languages more.
Number 3. What is your go-to snack food?
Oh man, my go-to snack food, probably oatmeal, because you can put all different stuff in it to flavor it differently.
Number 4. What is your favorite book growing up?
Wow, my favorite book growing up was when I was little. It was a picture book called Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, which is about a grumpy kid who's having a bad day. And I was a very moody kid when I was little. So my mom read me that book every time I was in a bad mood, which meant I heard it lots and lots of times. When I got older, it was always something by Judy Blume. Probably my all-time favorite is Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume.
Number 5. If you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
Oh man, if I could teleport somewhere right now, where would I go? London. I lived in London, England, my junior year of college. And there are times when I really miss it and I haven't been back in several years. So I'm overdue for a trip to London.
Number 6. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Super speed, no doubt. It would be really cool. And then I wouldn't need to teleport. I could just run to London, across the water.
Number 7. What's your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Wow. When I was a kid, there was a cartoon called The Super Friends, which was basically like the characters from the Justice League of America, but in a cartoon. And I used to wake my sister up at like 7 a.m. on Saturdays and drag her downstairs and make sure we watched it.
Number 8. What was your favorite rainy day activity?
Oh man. Well, for me, it was definitely one of my 2 things, which are just my favorite activities, period, which are reading and playing the drums, which fortunately you can do them both on a rainy day because they're both indoors.
Number 9. If you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
Oh man, 3 dinner guests. Well, I always say if they're allowed to be someone who isn't alive anymore,
Yes.
it would be my grandfather, because he was my hero when I was a kid and I miss him. My dad, who died almost 20 years ago, because I'd love to be able to kind of catch him up on what he's missed with the grandkids and how our lives are. And then just for the sake of coolness, my favorite author for grownups is named Kurt Vonnegut. He's dead in real life, but I would bring him. This is actually a pin of Kurt Vonnegut I keep on my writing desk to remind me of him. And I'd love to bring old Kurt back and get to talk to him about writing.
Number 10. What's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Okay, so not even just about writing, but that I was ever given. Well, when I was a kid at summer camp, and this is in one of the two books, I think it's in the Boy Who Failed show and tell. I was learning to water ski. And there was this French Canadian counselor named Louise who was in the water with me, like telling me what to do. I was holding the rope, and trying to get up on the water skis. And she said to me, I kept letting go of the rope and she wanted me to hang on. And she said, "You are not the kind of boy who lets go of the rope." And I thought, that's true. I'm not the kind of boy that lets go of the rope. I'm not going to let go, which is really good life advice for everything. Like, just hang on and don't be the person who quits. So she was just teaching me to water ski, but she really kind of taught me to hang tough, like across life.
You did great.
And thank you for spending this time with us.
We can't wait to read your future books.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.